Hey guys, so the first thing I'm going to be doing is tracing around my pattern. I've got my pattern here cut out of just a thin card and the holes poked through, the elastics marked and stuff as well, and the back holes there, so I'm going to trace around there. I've got just a washable Crayola. These ones are really good. The darker colours sometimes take 1 or 2 washes, but my light colours I find they're running out a little bit at the moment, so this is all I've got. Gonna go in with my soldering iron because I've got a whole stack there to do. It's so much faster to just do all of them at once, get them all traced, and then go through and dot the holes. I've also got to do the little reinforcement steps for each of these, so behind each dot I will also have a little square of PUL scraps just to help to reinforce the fabric. So I've separated out all the little reinforcement squares into separate little containers. They've all got their holes, they've all been cut. There should be enough for one nappy at least. And I usually just put them into the little plastic bags that my snaps come in if I have any left over, and I possibly do from last time. I forgot to check. For the purpose of this video though, I wanted to show what it was like to cut them all out and everything. So you can see the holes aren't perfect, they don't really need to be, but it's so much faster doing it with the soldering iron than it is to do it with just a snap awl. I was also using this little like leather kind of punch, which does quite big holes, but I found it was really chewing up my cutting mat, so I've stopped using that, and I've invested in the soldering iron. Now, I'm not entirely sure I've got enough, but I think I've done enough for now. Just put those ones aside, and now I'm going to grab my pattern. No, that's not my pattern. I'm going to grab the rest of the nappy, and what we're going to do is we are going to put the snaps in. I've got my snap press here ready to go. In the Flex Fit by Hippos, which is the main nappy pattern I use now, this row here, the second row, is going to be the male snaps, so these ones here, to show you from the opposite side of the nappy so you can see the holes. So these ones are going to be the males here, and then this row here. The top row, and then the other 3 rows here of rise snaps are going to be the female snaps. So we're going to add these ones here. These ones are going to go through these holes, through these, push them through, and then on the other side you're going to attach this snap here. So I've got, so currently I've got my my die set up for the male snaps, so the ones with the little pointy bit on them, those ones, and they've got little little dimples in the back. You can see that. You can see the little dimples in the back. That's kind of how I decipher which one's which. And then these ones are the female snaps. These ones here. My hand's shaking. So this one here is for the female snaps. So it's a slightly smaller little hole. I don't know if you can see that. I'll just grab out the other one. So these ones are just ones that twist in. This one here, so this one is the one for the male snaps, and this one is the one for the female snaps. So you can see this one here is wider, so it will go over the outside. Goes over the outside of the male snap, so that one fits nicely inside, like so. And this one is the narrow one, so it fits inside the gap of this one, like so. Males, it's a bit tricky. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to put the, what should I do first? I might do the male snaps first, so I'm going to use the wider one. I haven't marked them or anything, but you probably could, if you wanted to, just put a little bit of vivid on one of them. Some people have two snap machines, so you can have one set up for male, one set up for female. Would probably make it a little bit easier, but I find these ones are just fine. It doesn't take long to switch them over, so I'm just going to do the male snaps first, which is the first set of rise snaps, and then the bottom tummy panel snaps. I'll do one or two in like a normal speed, and then I'll do the rest in fast mode, just so you see kind of how long it takes. I worked up a little bit of a sweat doing this too. I haven't set up a like a hydraulic press or anything for these, so this is all done by hand. So I push it down. You do have to push quite hard, but not so hard that you feel it snap, because I have actually snapped a few by going too hard. So you can see here I've done one, and I've got my little reinforcement on the back. I'll do another one. So poke this through the hole. That one comes out the side, and then I'm going to add the little male snap to that one. Put it on here, fits into the little circle very well, and then you push down. Whoop. Shaky, shaky. Now you can use the hand presses, but I find that the hand presses don't push them down quite so hard, and with the, I don't know, especially the heavy hippos nappy patterns, they do have a lot of snaps. I guess the upside is that it is portable, you can do it anywhere, and you don't need to change between die sets kind of thing for doing males and female snaps. It is just one, but I find they don't snap them as well. Fine for, I don't know, I guess like cloth pads and stuff, or bibs, but once you're doing nappies, there is a lot of pressure on the nappies. They get washed all the time under pretty heavy conditions, really. So yeah, it's best to use a really good snap press. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of these in speed mode. So my snaps are all done for the two nappies I'm doing at the moment, and I had one left over from it each. I've been making nappies for a while now, and I'm still always surprised by how close I get when prepping the snaps and stuff. So those ones can just go back into packets, and those can go back in there, and I'll show you the nappies. Oh, Alright, so this one is the otter one, Otterly Lovely I call it. So I've got all of the snaps, they look all the same from the back. And see, if you were making a cover, you'd maybe want to try make the squares all go the same way, so they're all nice and straight. These ones are kind of diamond shaped and stuff, so in covers you can generally see them, but in all on twos you can't, so I don't worry too much about that. And on the front we've got the top row is female snaps, and then all of the rise snaps. We've got 3 rows of rise snaps, and then we've got the male snaps, so they do pucker a little bit, but once you've sewn it, it comes right. And then we've got this one over here. This one is the same, it's a bit pretty one-handed. So same thing here, you'd want to do the snaps quite nicely, but it doesn't really matter for how I'm doing this one. I love how the blue looks on this nappy. The blue looks so cool. I think it's an aqua colour, and this one's like a sea spray, I think they call it. It's really nice. It's actually lighter in person than in the video, but yeah, I really love these two and how the snaps coordinate with them. So the next step is to lay out the nappies onto, I'm using athletic wicking jersey. You could use suede cloth, bamboo velour, cotton velour, whatever kind of inner you want to use for your stay dry layer. Now because of the absorbency and stuff like that, baby's not actually going to feel this on any of their area down there, apart from around the wings and just kind of around the legs. So you're going to want to make sure it's nice and soft and really nice and stay dry. You can use a non-stay dry layer like minky, or just a straight cotton, or even just a straight bamboo fleece if you want it to be absorbent, but I personally like the stay dry layers for all in twos. Fitted you can have a bit more fun with, but for all in twos I like them to just be nice and dry. These ones I'm just using the white athletic wicking jersey. That's what my custom orders have requested because I'm running really low on the colours at the moment. So I'm just going to lay this down right side up, so this way. You can see there is a right side and a wrong side. The wrong side you can't see through. The side you can't see through either, but it looks like there's little holes. So athletic wicking jersey you can use both ways, but I think the side up is definitely the most popular way. So I'm going to lay this one down right side up and face these ones right side down, so they are sandwiched together. And I'm going to cut with my rotary cutter, this handy little thing here, which needs a clean, and then I'm going to pin or clip it. Now it doesn't really matter which way you lay your athletic wicking jersey, but I do believe it is stretchier one way more than the other. So if you were really worried, or if you're not too good at sewing, some PE wells are quite tricky to sew. They kind of tend to walk and move with the foot. You could use a walking foot, but yeah, just to make it a little bit easier, cut it with the grain going the right way. So there's the little kind of lines, I've got them going this way because I see that they stretch this way. So I could lay the nappy that way, but I think that's going against the grain. So yeah, I'll show you in a minute what I mean. I'll just lay this down here, and then I'm going to cut around it, making sure all the corners aren't hanging off. Now I have two options of what I like to do to pin. So I've got these little clips here. They're like Wonder Clips, but I just got them from like a $2 shop in town. They're nothing fancy. I think they were $2.50 for 10 or something like that. I know you can get them online from sewing. A lot of sewing places have them as well. Or you can use pins, which I have. Alright, back. So these are my clips that I got. I put them in my nice little container, which matches my other little container, also from the $2 shop. So handy. And then I've got my pins as well, my pin cushion. So I have pretty much always used pins, and I just make sure you don't pierce the PUL in your sewing line. So I've got my line and I've got plenty of a seam allowance, so usually I just pin outside of the seam allowance fairly close so it stays really secure. And you're going to want to pin obviously against the way that you're going to sew it, so you don't want to be sewing towards this, it makes it harder to get out. you want to be sewing towards the sharp end so you can pull it easier. But lately, since I've invested in more of these, invested at $2.50, I do actually just prefer to make sure my seam allowance is nice and small, not too big, and then just clip these ones. I feel like it holds a little bit better, to be honest, especially since the PUL and the athletic working jersey are quite stretchy. It just tends to stop it from moving around so much. So I'm going to use these ones today. I'm going to trim the seam allowance a little bit, just a little bit more careful, and then I'm going to chuck some of these on. I'll be placing these just a couple of inches apart. Not very good with inches, but 2, 3, 4, about 4 inches apart, just to secure it. They don't need to be super close together. I see a lot of people using, like 20 or 30 on a nappy. You could space, you could put more here if you wanted to, but I find I don't really need them to. And once I've started, I start up in the corner up here. Once I've started, I come along here, and I've already taken off 2 or 3, so if I need to, I can kind of add more along this long bit or more along the corner as I go, but for now, I prefer to just do kind of a couple at a time. Now once I started sewing, I was pretty much just using Performance Peak from Spoonflower, so it's kind of like the polyester layer before they add the polyurethane laminate to it. So it's very similar, it just hasn't got that waterproof. So then I would add a separate layer of just plain white waterproofing to the nappy to back it, which means I wouldn't need the reinforcing snaps. And then I would also use Microfleece as the stay dry layer, as nice fluffy kind of inner, and the nappies were a lot thicker, so I'm now fairly confident enough to be sewing this thinner layer. It is 2 layers, it is very, very slippery, so it can be a little bit tricky, but if you need to, just add more pins, go slow. Now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to start sewing. I've got my little turning hole here, so I'm going to start sewing right here. And I'm going to go all the way around, and I'm going to stop right here, and that's going to give me enough room. You could even do a slightly smaller one, but that's just the one that's marked on the pattern. That's going to give you enough room to turn the whole thing inside the right way once we're done. So you're going to want to set your machine to stitch in the middle, so in that little crease line there, so you know to follow the line you've drawn with the pen. So I can get my fabric in, so you're constantly moving, there's so many corners and so many edges you need to go around. I'm just going to do this, and so with my left hand. So you're going to want to do this the whole way around. Just going to set it over here. I could have added a few more clips if I wanted to, but this is going to do me just fine for now. I don't feel like I need any more clips. I've sewed with this fabric a few times. I'm however going to put that clip back there. The corners always seem to want to move, this corner especially, the one right under the wing. So don't be afraid to lift your presser foot and turn. This fabric, this PUL, can be quite sticky. You can use a Teflon foot or a walking foot to kind of help it along, but I found with this machine it is okay as long as I go nice and slow, which is annoying because I'm usually a very, very fast sewer. But I go nice and slow. With the right needle, I'm using a ballpoint needle, which is perfect for sewing with stretchy fabrics and especially sewing with the PUL. So you're not piercing big holes in it, you are just kind of moving the fibres of the fabric out of the way instead of making big holes. If you've got skipped stitches at all, or I don't know, kind of big clunking noises or anything, you're obviously using the wrong size needle. I think this one is a 70 off the top of my head, 70 by 14 or something. I know the ball points can come in 70s, 80s or 90s. The 90s are often really good if you are using microfleece or suede cloth and PUL with a cotton lycra over top. It's easy. When you're top stitching, because when you're top stitching you are actually going through quite a lot of layers already, and when you're using some kind of thick fabrics, once you get to the elastic points, you're going to be doing elastic points and stuff, it can make it very, very tricky to get through, and you can get a lot of skip stitches. So often I do swap. I use like a 70 for just the construction of the nappy, and then the top stitching and elastics I often do use. I do swap to a 80 or a 90 depending on what fabric I'm using. I'm focusing on talking and not focusing on sewing. Now my pen line has kind of faded already just from rubbing it with my fingers and air and stuff, and it's PUL so it's slippery, it doesn't want to stay on very well. The one thing I love about this nappy pattern, which I actually personally haven't even used on my children, one day, they're all grown up now, is the tummy panels on all of them, the flex fit and the flawless fit, and even the newborn flawless. They're really nice and curved, so they've got kind of like a mountainous shape to them, so they really do fit really well around the tummy, chunky babies included. They're really nice. This is not a sponsored video, this is just this is the nappy pattern I've chosen. I've gone through a few of them and this is the one I prefer. It's easy to sew, it fits, the size range is really, really good, and it just seems to fit pretty much all babies really, really well. There's really good reviews on Etsy and online too. Now sometimes here with some PULs, some of the cheaper ones especially, some brands, they don't like to stay nice and straight when you're sewing them. This one is fantastic. This is the PUL from Fabric by Missy Rose in Australia. She's not actually doing PUL at the moment with the pre-orders. She's got a little bit of retail, but not a lot. I got this in, I think, the last pre-order she offered with PUL. I think it's for something to do with COVID and suppliers and stuff. But this PUL, it's the first time I've used it from her, and it is absolutely fantastic. Really, really nice. I've not had any issues. Sometimes along here you can get like where it kind of starts to push, and you'll get puckers like this on top, and you have to stop and go around and start and kind of stretch it out a little bit, which is awful for the nappies, but with this fabric I found it's just absolutely fantastic. So I still go slow, I'm still very careful just because PUL does have a tendency to kind of stretch, and I don't like using a walking foot. It's just not something I'm that happy to use. I went out and bought one once for about $50, but yeah, not something I like to do. Now you want to make sure you're not pulling the fabric at all, and this is not the type of fabric you can push into the sewing machine either, so you just really got to let it do its thing, which is why lots of pins is very handy. Now we're coming up to, there is a marking for my back elastic placement, and the second line is the turning hole, so don't get that mixed up. Make sure you go to the second line, back tack it a couple of times, and I have a machine cutter on my machine, so I like to do that. So you can see I have, oh, pin on my hand. I have started here, gone all the way around, and come back and stopped on the marking point here. Now, like I said, this little marking point right here is for my elastics. I have not added a very large seam allowance. I usually would, to be honest, for the back elastic. I like to add a thicker seam allowance, one, so I know where to go from, so I don't have to do any marks or anything once I've put the nappy pattern away. And 2, just to kind of, because this is very thin, both of the fabrics are quite thin, the more fabric between baby and nappy is fantastic. So I keep my elastic, I do, getting confused, I do turned and top stitched and elastic casings, so I cut this a little bit wider, so I cut it about here. That way, once I've done that, my elastic casing goes here. This is inside it, and you've got that little extra protection away from the elastic on baby's legs, and I think that's the best way to do it. It makes it a little bit thicker on the elastic casings, but hardly at all. If I have thick fabrics, I often cut away one of the fabrics from this extra seam allowance, but I'll kind of show you what I mean. So I'm going to cut, I usually cut the opposite direction. This is a little bit weird. Got my little system, I go along that way. And I will actually, I'll go this way. So I cut here, and I'm going to leave my seam allowance for my turning hole, my turning point here, and I'm going to leave that a little bit wider, just so I can do a nice top stitch, and I don't have to go too close to the seam, because I think that just looks terrible, so it's very awkward. So I'm just going to cut to that elastic marking point there, and I'm going to snip. So like I said, I would usually leave a bigger seam allowance, so when I turn it inside I can actually just feel where this point here is. I can just feel it, and I can put a little pin or a little clip there, so I know where to start my elastic casings. Now you're also going to want to snip your corners on the wings and the flex fit on my patterns that I use. I use the nice square tummy panel. So this corner here, I'm just going to snip like that, just so it turns out nicely. And this one here, do a little cut that way, and do a little snip. You don't want to go too close, obviously, because then you'll cut the stitching, but just enough to take away that bulk from the corner is enough. So I'm here at another elastic casing point, so I've got my little fabric mark here. I'm gonna snip, and I'm gonna leave about, my elastic's about that wide, so I'm gonna go about that wide. Oh, it's not focusing. About this wide. You can see here, just about 1/2 centimeter, a little bit more maybe. Just change the camera angle a little bit because it was getting a little bit in the way. Just going to continue on cutting the elastic casing. I can go a bit faster now. And I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to snip in a little bit, and then go back to just a normal seam allowance left. So just a little kind of, I don't know, what is that, 1/4 of an inch? Less than 1/4 of an inch. I'm not very good with inches. Just that much. Remember to snip your corners. That one. Now these nappy patterns have, I think it's an optional front elastic, but I always do the front elastic. I think it makes that contoured tummy panel in the front really nice and snug, and it just fits so beautifully. A lot of nappies have that gape in the front, which is fine. You want to make sure that everywhere else fits and kind of not worry so much about that gap in the front. But this pattern just completely eliminates that, and kind of any other pattern that has a tummy elastic. So I do the flex fit, and also the flawless, and the flawless newborn, but I don't sell very many of those. The flawless newborn also has an optional tummy elastic, which you would opt out of if you were to do the umbilical cord snap. So these ones are optional, but I think most people do the front elastic. You can just do the front elastic the same thickness as the legs and everything as well. I think a 8mm, 6 or 8mm leg elastic, and a 12mm back elastic. I like the back elastics to be just a little bit wider. Really helps hold everything in. Any explosions. That one's all cut out. Those are my mess. So now I've got this one cut out. All of my little elastic points have that little extra part here all the way along, so that way when I turned it inside out like this, I usually just put my thumb in, so I've got just my thumb inside, and I'm going to kind of use my fingers, and I'm going to go right to one of these corners over here, one of these tummy panel corners, and I'm just going to put my finger here, and I'm going to push inside out of the corner, and then it kind of just comes out all by itself. You're going to want to push your corners, push your wings, and that wing, that one, and then these ones here. You don't really need to get your whole hand in there, but these ones. And then I'm going to take my scissors. I mean, there are a lot of tools out there. I know that you can use the same kind of thing. You can use a knitting needle or a crochet hook or anything like that kind of thing. A chopstick, anything, but I always just have my scissors on hand, and I know they're not sharp on the end. They're pretty good, so I'm not going to pierce anything, and I'm just going to really gently kind of push these corners out here, just so they're nice and square. You can see it made a big difference from this, which I could get most of the way out with my fingers, to this, which is really nice and square. You can probably get a little bit more out, but that'll do for now. Go to the other side and push these corners out too. Just really gently. Don't want to poke any holes. I have done that before, but like I said, I'm working on a customer order, and I really don't want to have to redo anything because I don't have any more of this fabric. This is the last flex fit in my Otis fabric, and it has just been so popular, so adorable. I really wish I got more, but I live in New Zealand and the shipping from Australia is horrendous for fabric. Fabric is really heavy, surprisingly. It's scary how heavy it is once it's all bundled up in a big order. Not as bad as the US, but even then. I just got a couple of ones to try. Like I said, I'd never used the fabric from Fabric by Missy Rose before, the PUL, so I didn't want to order too much and have it fail, because I've done that with the company before. I really didn't like the quality of their fabric, so I probably wouldn't order off them again. So now I can feel right here, I can feel where my casing points are, because I cut that a little bit wider. I'm not sure if you can see here, but you can kind of see the little end points here. So usually I don't actually have my pins on me, I left them in my room, but I would just put a little pin here, not through the PUL, just through the back layer, so I'm not piercing a hole in the waterproof layer, just right there where I can feel the markers, and that's where I'm going to sew. So I'm going to start at that mark and I'm going to sew along to the next mark. Okay, I've got my pins, so I'm just going to grab one. I'm going to feel for that mark, that seam, and I'm just going to put a little pin just in the outside, just in the inside, I mean, not on the outside layer. I'm going to go to the side, I'm going to put one there too, just like that. Then I'm going to come around to the leg ones, and you can kind of see where these ones are. I feel just from where they are on the corner, but I'm just going to feel and put a pin through. I'm going to do that for all of them. Alright, so they're all done, and I'm going to take it back to the sewing machine, and I'm going to start sewing the elastic casing. So just for timing's sake, I'm just going to show the tummy elastic being done, just the casing. So I'm going to change my needle position back to 1, which is right to the side, and I'm going to use the very edge of my presser foot over the side as the, just show you, as my marker kind of thing. So I've just got a little tiny gap there and there, and I'm going to put my sewing, my stitch length to a 3.5 again. So it's just a 1 by 3.5. Put my needle down, take my pin out, oops, bring it back over here, and then I'm just going to sew right to my other pin mark. Back tack. So I just press stop and then take my pin out, that way I don't pierce my pin because we don't like that. back tack a couple of times and cut my thread. So now we have a nice little casing for our elastic. Alright, so I've got my my thicker elastic. I'm going to do my back elastic first. So I just use a bobby pin and I just poke it through. It goes through super easy. This is a knitted or braided. I don't actually know. It's not the non-roll one, but I do prefer it because it is nice and soft. So this one is my 12mm and I think this one is my 6mm. Must be 6 or 8. Must be 8mm. So I use the 8mm for the legs and the tummy elastic. It's super stretchy. I do really like this elastic. I get it from Green Beans, the same place I get my plain PUL and my absorbent fabric and everything from. So I get it at the same time. This one is also nice and stretchy. It's just obviously a little bit sturdier, being a little bit thicker. So I'm gonna I just poke it through, and then on my card that came with it, I've got some markings on here already, just to make it easier for me. I do change this depending on what fabric I'm using, just to make it a little bit tighter or a little bit looser. See, often you need to do it like a little bit tighter if you've got really thick fabric, but this one is just my standard. I'm getting very confused. Alright, so I've got my marking, and all I do is I just put my little bobby pin over here right on the starting point where I've measured it from, and I bring it over here. I don't stretch it, I just leave it straight, and I'm just going to mark on this line for flex. So I can't really see that, but I'll just redo it. Flex, and then I do like a little cutting mark here. So that's my main, that's where I sew, and that's where I cut. You can see I had a little bit left over from getting it on behind there. So I don't cut it until I've threaded it through. And all I'm going to do is grab this, I'm going to go through this turning hole here, and I like to go behind any fabric that is inside here. So I can't really show you, but really I'm going to get that bobby pin with my elastic as close to this side as I can and as far away from this side as I can, because this is where the skin is going to be, and the elastic can irritate some kids, some babies, so just going to keep that as close to this side as I can. That's why I like to keep a big seam allowance. This one doesn't have that, but I'm still going to try to keep it as close to that side as I can from that seam allowance at the top. It'll just help a little bit. So I'm just going to feed it through until I get to the other side. Oh, something's gone wrong here. Not sure what happened there. Let's just feed it through and pull, feed and pull, feed and pull until I get to the side, and I can feel the bobby pin. You can use a safety pin. I originally did, but I found I always lost my safety pins, and you need a really nice big chunky one. Bobby pin works fine, and I have about a bajillion on hand at all times, being a woman with kids, so so I can feel here. I usually leave about a half an inch, just roughly, from my marking of my bobby pin here and my casing mark here. So I'm just going to turn this around, turn it around, it's still the same, and I don't bother pinning because I just hold this in place. And I just take it to my machine. So I'm just going to hold it. I'm going to put it under here. I'm going to line my little line up. Move it a little bit closer. No, I have to hold it. I'm just going to line my little line up here, and I'm going to change my seam allowance back to 3, which is 3.5, which is in the middle. And I'm going to put my stitch length at a 3 as well, just so it's nice and secure. Put my needle down, and I'm just going to sew with my tripod. That's a little bit tricky. And back, and then I like to go forward to there, and then just cut. Don't want to go through too many times because it's PUL. 3 times is plenty to reinforce that elastic, and the less holes the better, obviously. So I just take that out, put my tripod back down. So now I can unthread my bobby pin, just thread it through, back to the side. Ta-da! And I always lose that, no matter where I put it down, and I tell myself, I put it to the left side of me. I will lose it, and I'll go through like 5 a day, almost, until I find them later, mostly falling on the floor. So now you can see the full length of the elastic here if I come right back. And I usually just hold the stitch mark. It's stitched and everything, so you don't need to hold that, but I just pull the side and then kind of let it ruche up. And I like to put my thumb on the very last stitch here so I can see and I can find that pen mark. So I can see my old pen mark, which means I'm close. It's on the side, which is a bit annoying. I try to make sure it's on the right side. Making sure my thumb is there. If I turn it around, I can see that is right on. Right, the very last thing I can see is that stitch mark. Ooh. Which means it's in the right place. I just grab that, and I'm gonna pin through, but I'm gonna pin exactly where I know that needle is gonna go, so I don't need to worry about having unnecessary holes in the PUL. So you can see this is what the back elastic looks like. Now the Happy Hippos patterns doesn't have a measured elastic. I don't think from reading the instructions it had like a certain measurement for the back elastics and leg elastics and everything. They do tell you to just do it by feel. So generally you would just pull it the tightest it would go as you're sewing and just kind of give it a little bit of slack, or you can measure where you're going and then half that, and that's how much you do. And I do that with some nappies, but with this one I've done it so many times, and I've done a few where I've just tried to feel how tight I like the elastic, and I can feel that this is nice and soft, but also nice and tight. That's not going to hurt your baby, but it is nice and tight to hold everything in. So I kind of know how I like my elastics, which is why I have them pre-measured on here. And I just trace it onto like a new piece of cardboard. Like I've got another one here that I just ordered, so when I'm done I will mark out that point onto here, so they're all different, so I can't just use that same one. Yeah, and I've got my markings on this one as well. This one I've got trim for flawless and F for flex. Yeah, and so I'll just cut this. Cut it on my cutting mark. Oh no, I haven't sewed it yet. Hold on. So I'll just bring my sewing machine back, and I'm just going to sew this into place. So put that one down. Once that's in, I can hold my elastic right here nice and tight, and I'm going to pull the pin out just so I don't sew over the pin. Sewing over pins is like the worst thing you can do. Back and then forward. I'm going to stop and cut. When the kids are playing outside. Chaos! Alrighty, now it's sewed. Nice and tidy. Nice and tidy because we didn't do too many stitches. It is just enough to secure that in, and it is secure enough. I've never had any issues with those coming undone, so that is definitely strong enough. So I'm going to move that back, and I'm going to cut. My scissors again. I'm just going to cut on that line, which wasn't quite the line. It was close. That's okay. Alright, and then I'm going to do the same for my leg elastics and my tummy elastics. So for the tummy elastic, I don't actually pre-measure or pre-mark my elastic for it, just because it is honestly so impossible to get all the way into the nappy and have a look, like to see where the marking would be. I just go by feel. So I thread it through and I stitch here, and then I just kind of stretch it and I just get it to where I think it is the best, where it's not too tight, not too loose, just that really nice in between. So I like it to just be a little bit ruched and a little bit stretchy, but not too tight and also not too loose. So I think you know, there's a little bit of give here, and everyone's probably ever so slightly different, but this is this right here I think is just really perfect. Maybe just a little bit tighter. I think I let it go a little bit. So just pull it and then kind of give a little bit of ease on my thumb just to make it just a little bit tighter. And it does kind of tend to get a little bit twisted in there too, so this one is very tricky to do to get it really well. I'm going to go there. Just put my pin in through where the needle was going to go, and I'm just going to stitch this one. And this is the last one. I've also just found the two different types of elastic as well. So this is the braided elastic I get, so I do use the 12mm for the back elastic, and I purchased this a few weeks ago for making my daughter some crop hoodies. She's obsessed with crop hoodies at the moment, and I wanted this to be on the bottom instead of a band out of like cotton lycra. So this is non-roll, which is braided. No, this is knitted, I believe, or ribbed elastic or something. This you do not use for nappies. Basically, this is awful. This feels terrible. It doesn't roll, but it's not soft. It's very, very tough the way they make it. It's the braided one that you want to use. So the braided one is really soft. You can see it's got less of a harsh kind of grain line through it. This one is a no-no. Please don't use this for nappies. You can use that thin elastin, like swimwear elastic as well. A lot of people use that for the legs. I personally don't have a bloody clue how you use that. I like to use it in underwear though, in the bands of underwear. So yeah, this is the one to go for. So I have finished all my elastics. I've got my back elastic and my leg elastics, nice, and my tummy elastic. So the last step at the sewing machine, apart from my label, but that is obviously optional, you don't need to add a label if you're just making them for yourself. So I like to just tuck in my tuning hole here, and see, because I added such a big seam allowance, you can see it's come down to here. I don't have to come right up and sew like right along this line, which is great. I don't need to worry about it not catching, so I like to just make that nice and straight. And I'm gonna put a clip, and I love secretly organising matching clips. Orange for the little orange on there. I really do wish I had orange snaps, but I think it just might have been just a little bit too much, which is why I like these really subtle ones that kind of matches the little lines in here. Alright, so lastly is top stitching. Like I said before, if you've got a thicker fabric or a thicker stay dry fabric or a few more layers inside, like if you're making like a hybrid fitted or something with just like a hidden PUL in the middle, you might want to change your needle to a thicker needle, because this is actually really thin. This is a really nice thin cover, a nice thin fabric and nice thin stay dry. I'm just going to stick with the needle I was using before, and I shouldn't really have any issues. If I do, I'll just kind of back tack over where the elastics are. That would be the only place I would have any trouble, so I'll just go ahead and top stitch, and then we're pretty much done. And my top stitching is done. So I didn't show what stitches I use for my top stitching, so I just keep my needle on just the very far left, whoopsie daisy, very far left, and a 3.5 or a 4 depending on I don't know, just depending on what it is or what I feel like doing. So it keeps it like a really nice, just kind of half a centimetre away. So I just use the left hand side of my presser foot as a guide, and my needles over here. So I just do that the whole way round. I was doing it over on this side as my guide with my needle over this way, but I found around the snaps on this nappy pattern, you cannot get your whole presser foot around this little corner here around the snap, so you do really need to use that side or something like a zipper foot or something to get around these snaps, just to make it a bit easier. Alright, all that needs to be done now is just to trim away the threads. I sometimes do this at each step, but lately I've just been doing it at the end because it feels like it's a never-ending job getting rid of all the loose threads. So I'll just finish doing this and I'll show you the nearly finished nappy. Okay, I have got my nearly finished nappy here. We are back in my room to do the very last step, which is add the wing snaps and the back snaps for the absorbency. So I added my little shop label, Ginger Jam Creations, just with a very small stitch just over top. Yeah, so we've got the nearly finished nappy. I don't know why it looks so crooked, it's so hard to lay it out with one hand. I'll just set this up and I will show you how we do the last snaps. So we're just going to add the wing snaps now, and I've got on my pattern marked out where they go. So these ones have one row of normal snaps and a hip snap, and then also the crossover snap. So these ones on the side need to be up the other way, and on this side we've just got the two normal wing snaps and a hip snap. So I'm using my little leather punch again. Oh, I think it's a leather punch. It came with my machine and it seems that's what it does. It's got this little hole. It makes good size holes actually. And I'm just going to move this over to my grey cutting mat, which I love quite a little bit less than my brand new one, to make the holes. That way I don't have to mark it with Crayola markers and get my snap awl. So I just do this, just lay it over top. Oh, just lay it over top and I just poke the holes through. So I will do that. So because we have two different layers, two different types of snaps up here, up on the tummy panel, we need to do this one here, this one at the top. So this one up the top needs to be a male snap to go into the female, and the one on the bottom of the wing needs to be a female snap to go into the male. So these two here will be the same, and this one up here will be the same. And then we've got the ones that need to go in here. It's a little confusing. It is a good idea to mark them on your pattern until you get used to which ones go up which way. So I'm just going to grab the coordinating snaps. And we don't need reinforcement for these ones because we've got the reinforcement of the athletic wicking jersey. That is plenty. I've got my female one in at the moment. So I will do the bottom row, make sure that's correct. It always pays to check because there's many steps to remember. So I've got that one, and then I always try to remember that this one is going to be the same as this one. That's going to be on the side. And the female one. And then there is another hole right here for the two crossover snaps. So this one up here is going to be the same as these two, so it's like a little triangle, but it's going through the opposite way. So we're going through this way this time, up that way. So as you can see, these two here are going into the snaps on the tummy panel, and this one here is going to have the other wing come onto this one, just for really tiny babies. They're probably optional. You probably don't need to do that. I just mostly do it because that's how I close the nappy and take photos, is with the wings completely crossed over like that, so you can kind of see that it gets quite small. Alright, and then the side, the bottom ones again. And the little hip snap. And then with the females, we're also going to find the little holes that I push through in the first couple of steps, because the absorbency on the inside goes, they do snap, so the snaps go right through. It's no problem that you can see them from the outside. I think they look cute. So you're going to find the hole. And I'm just going to pierce that through because the athletic looking jersey is quite thin. You don't really need to pre-hole it. And the other one. Let's go find the hole. There it is. And just push through. You can also just grab this one and put it on the pointy part and push, and that'll just pierce the hole for you. You don't need to pre-drill. Alright. Now I will just, since I'm just doing one at the moment, I decided to leave the other one with just snaps. I didn't even cut the athletic looking jersey for that one. I'll just swap over to the male snap die. And now all I've got to do is 1, 2, and 3. So this one's super fast. Nice little finishing line. One. And this one goes up the other way. Now don't worry if you get one wrong, there are ways to remove snaps. You just need to be really careful because once you've put the snap in, you do have a slightly bigger hole, and a lot of the ways to remove it will make a larger hole, which will make it not so secure. It'll start pulling away. So there are a few methods that are really good. Soldering iron is a new one I've learnt too, which is super handy. That's super fast. Done! Alright, I'll just lay it out. Now I haven't done the absorbency. That one's really straightforward. This will just be for the nappy cover, as I will do all the absorbency for all my custom orders once my bamboo arrives from a courier, hopefully tomorrow, and once I've pretty much finished all the covers. So here we go. Here's the finished nappy. It's super cute. I love the otters. So you've got the three rise snaps and the one that it snaps into, and you've got your crossover wings here. So I'll open these ones up. You can see here they cross over, and these ones are snapping into the little tummy panel here. These ones, you've got your front, you've got your back elastic and your front elastic, which is super cute, super cozy. That one there, so it just fits around nicely. And I'll show you what it looks like when it's snapped up to the small setting. Super tiny. So that is the smallest it goes. That is the smallest rise setting. Did I do the middle one? Yes, I did. So you want to poke these up. I know it probably makes no sense when there's no baby here, but this little like extra layer here from doing the rise snapped up, you want to put your fingers up. You don't want to flatten it down because it makes it way more chunky around the legs, and then you can't get a good tight seal around the legs. So these ones are awesome though. If you look on their Facebook page, they have heaps of photos and stuff of everyone wearing them and making them. They are a really, really good nappy pattern, and I will be using these ones for a very long time to come. I'm glad I found them. I will link the pattern below in the description. It is available on Etsy. She often has sales where you can get 10% off or 15% off, but honestly they are amazing. You seriously get what you pay for. They are fantastic nappy patterns, and I'm really, really glad I found them, and I hope you guys love them.